Kenton, got a question for you. This is how hit you with it.
Hit me with it. It's like being back at school.
Yeah.
15.
Tom.
69.
Tom over here.
What was it? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What was the answer in that? Was it 47 or something?
What was that?
Did you ever read that?
What's that?
The book.
Yeah, no, what was the question?
I can't remember. The question to the universe. Was it the question to the universe?
Oh yeah, and what was the answer to it?
It was something arbitrary, like 47. 15? I don't know.
No, in the I was made to read that at school. No.
I didn't like it.
I didn't like it.
Have you got a book yet?
Boy, has he. Available in all good charity shops.
Ken, what you won't know about me is when an offer comes in, boy, do I take it.
It was unusual in the sense that it got published and went straight into the bargain bucket.
It was one of the worst decisions I've ever made.
What, to write a book?
Yes.
Why was that?
No,
because I haven't climbed Everest like you.
No, it doesn't matter. It's your own journey.
Okay, my journey.
There we go.
Okay, do you want to hear my journey?
Role reversal. Right? Whose podcast is this? Is it mine or yours?
Went to private school. Parents divorced. That was it. Then I joined. That was literally all I had to give. And I was asked to do it.
How do you pad that out for like 50 pages?
A lot of photos. A lot of photos.
It was quite hard to do. And we had, do you know who I mean by Richard Osman? Do you know Richard Osman?
No,
tall
I don't
guy.
think so.
He's a tall guy. He used to host
Pointless.
Right, it was what, a podcast or a TV show or whatever? I've only just got a TV.
That's right. You won't know this, will you? Because you don't have a TV.
Well, I do now.
Yeah.
But Richard Osman, his books, he's written a trilogy. And the first book has sold, I think, 4 million copies now. So he's killed it. And my book had just come out and I gave it to him as a present. And he's a pretty smart guy. I've never seen it. He tore it apart. The first thing was called I Can Explain. And it was a picture of me tied up in a chair. And he was like, was that because you're so crazy that they needed to tie you up in a chair? Otherwise, it would be too wild. And honestly, he tore me apart.
Oh my God.
How many books have you written, Kenton?
Just the one.
Just the one?
Just the one, yeah.
About your life?
Pretty sycophantic, self-indulgent. It's all about me, myself, and I. One man's Everest.
Yeah. But I think with you,
that'll probably get torn apart as well.
No ways. Your one is and also before we kick things off, I just want to say thank you.
Oh, have you started?
Yeah, this is it.
Oh, we have. Okay, fantastic.
I lure people
Buckle
in.
up.
Yeah, I lure people into a real sense of just feeling relaxed, like just hanging out, just hanging out. Your story is pretty wild.
Well, not as wild as you. I didn't need tying up.
Yeah, but I think you needed bandaging up and all these different things throughout your life. And how many times have you climbed Everest? It's 16 times. 16
times now.
Wow.
Yeah, I was literally on the top 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I got back to the UK. Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Pretty busy. Why 16 times?
Why 16? A widespread lack of imagination.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean,
is it like an addictive thing?
Most things are addictive. I think. Addiction. Anyway, we won't go into addiction.
Not alcohol. Not alcohol.
Where were we? Oh yeah, why Everest 16 times? We're partly work.
Yeah.
I'm an Everest guide. So, a bit like the A-Team. If you got enough money, if you can find me, then maybe you can climb Everest.
Yeah.
But more than that, I love Nepal. I love the people. I love the culture. And the fact that people will literally pay me to go climb Everest with them and look after them just gives me a really good reason to go back and work with my Sherpa friends and work on that mountain.
So people will pay you to get them up to the top of Everest?
And back down again.
Yeah, importantly back down.
That bit's left out sometimes. No, unless there's like a spurned a husband or wife who pays me not to bring them back.
Yeah.
But man, that's also open to negotiation.
Oh my God.
That's often more than bringing them back.
Yeah.
But Kenton, there has to be something more than that because, okay, what were you like as a child? Were you one of these kids who constantly outdoors, constantly like it? Did you just enjoy adventures all the time?
Yeah, very much so. So I was we've only just met, but I like to think we're friends.
Yeah, 100%.
I know your mother.
Glad you said it.
Yeah, I know your mother pretty well. So
that's good.
Pretty well, very well.
No, listen,
I see her regularly.
No, you don't. No, you don't. She's locked the doors. That's what I've heard.
No, joking apart, we are neighbours. So if the audience is listening, I live out in the Cotswolds, and we're pretty much neighbours. So few fields apart. Mm-hmm. But no, what was I like as a child? I was born in Slough. which is why I was saying we're all friends, because not many
Yeah.
people would boast about coming from Slough, famous for the poem "Come Friendly Bombs, Come Rain on Slough." So
Yeah.
John Betjeman. You
Yeah.
probably learned that at your private school. Did you learn that?
Yeah, I did actually.
You did.
I did.
As well as reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But no, I grew up in the corner of a farm field. We just had a little bungalow there, and yeah, not much going on. So I was outside all the time, pretty much. Whenever I had the opportunity, throwing sticks in concrete trees or building dens or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I didn't. Slough's flat. The last time I looked.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's no adventure there. So it's a Mars bar factory. So maybe I ingested enough Mars bars.
But the thing is, you must have an appetite, and I want to get into the whole thing. You must have an appetite for risk. Like there has to be, right? There has to be something within yourself to like from a young kid is that you love pushing boundaries and
I'm super competitive.
Really?
Yeah, to the point of almost destruction. And I got a severe jealousy streak as well. So put those two together, it can be quite destructive. But then if it's channeled in the right way, it can be really productive. I think I was pretty productive. I always wanted to be the best. I wanted to climb higher up the tree or win the hockey match or whatever it was. So I think that probably had something to do, to do with it. And then sort of added into the mix.
But what do you mean destructive? In what ways was it destructive? Or can it be destructive?
Well, jealousy is a really poor value to have, isn't it?
Totally, I agree, yeah.
It's hideous. And I think if you are... So my competitiveness came through perhaps looking at other people and thinking, I want to be better than you, or I want to be like you. That sort of jealous streak rather than a constructive competitiveness. And it's only through sort of working on myself in the last few years that I kind of realized the difference between that destructiveness.
Was there, because you've obviously turned it into something positive, or was there a period where it went in a negative way?
I wouldn't say super negative, but I'm a professional mountain guide. There's not very many of us around, certainly not in the UK. And instead of helping the next generation, I would kind of spurn them to try to be the number one mountain guide, for instance. It's only recently that I realized how short-sighted that is. Not just from a community point of view and a sort of cultural collective point of view, but from my own self-growth as well. You can't spurn people and deliberately not help people thinking that it's going to give you the one-upmanship. If you're going to be number one, you should be number one on your merit, not putting somebody else down or not deliberately not helping somebody.
That is so true. Yeah, but it's tricky, and I suppose
Jamie's very jealous. You like to put down a lot of other podcasts.
Well, this is a number one podcast, is it not? That's what I was told when I was
damn straight.
Jamie will do anything
that's how
to
you
keep it
seduce
number
me
one.
to get here.
Believe me,
Damn
he will do anything.
straight it is. It's a great book, but I definitely have jealousy within me for sure, and not jealousy in terms of relationships or things. I'm not jealous like that. I'm competitive like you massively, and actually, as I've got older, it's got a little bit worse. I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so.
No, mine's the other way around. I think mine's been tempered because I kind of realized that on any given day, and I got this from arguably the best podcast going. Desert Island Disc.
That's bullshit. What are you talking? This is great.
No,
Desert Island Disc. Desert Island Disc.
Yeah, Desert Island Disc. I mean, that's the original podcast, surely.
Yeah, it is.
I think that's a radio show, not a podcast.
That turned into a podcast, though.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think.
But what's the difference?
Well,
One's on demand, one's not. I think that's what it is.
There you go.
There you go. That is the greatest answer I've ever given so quickly.
It's succinct as well.
I hadn't planned that, but honestly, yeah.
Anyway, so I learned that from Desert Island Disc. There's the radio show Desert Island Disc. Okay, so you're still on number one spot. Does it make you feel
Thank
good?
you. It makes me feel much better. Thank you.
Okay. And it was Martina Navratilova was being interviewed, and I forget Kirsty Young. No, it wasn't me. Kirsty Young before that. I was interviewing her and saying, "Did you ever get nervous? You sent to court Wimbledon." Championship match, whatever. Did you ever get nervous? And she was like, no, because on any given day, somebody might have beaten me. And because of that, I was never nervous. And if I was beaten, it was built on merit. And I listened to this years ago and just thought, And that's so true. As much as I always wanted to be the best, at some stage, somebody is going to be better than you. And it could be a fluke. It could be because they're younger or faster, got more energy, or they're just simply better. And you just got to accept that.
Yeah. But it's hard to, I think it's hard to, I used to have it as a kid. I used to run,
I think it is a podcast.
I love how his mind was working, getting back to it. As a kid, though, I had that. I used to run a lot, and I remember I used to go to the nationals. Went to the nationals, very good runner, and I remember I used to get so nervous because it was the prospect of not winning that would make me almost sick.
So the fear of failure.
The fear of failure, completely.
Yeah.
But
the fact you're at the nationals anyway, even before you start, you're winning.
Yeah, true. I mean, but I didn't see it like that.
How many people don't even get to the nationals?
Yeah. But I would. That's actually exactly what I never thought of it that way. Mine is the fear of failing. The fear of failing I had, but I then throw myself into situations where I'm bound to fail. So I'm not scared that failures.
Self-sabotage.
Is that what it is?
Well, if you go out to fail, then sort of. And the interesting thing, so when you say fear of failure, is that fear of failure within yourself or in the eyes of your peers?
I don't know. Possibly in the eyes of my peers, potentially.
Because I still struggle with that to a certain extent.
Yeah, why do we? Especially typically men as well. It's so funny. We have this thing where we have to, I don't know. As a kid, it's about, I don't know, you grow up and it's like being good at sport. And then when you leave, it's about doing, it's about, I don't know, who you're dating or whatever. And then it's about business or achievements or whatever. We always feel like there's this competitive edge, I feel.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, to a certain extent, that's pushed onto us by society. I mean, what was the film? Wall Street. Look at Gordon Gekko. Greed is good. Okay, so in that film, when was that? In the 80s, whenever it was, constantly striving to get essentially more money, greedier, bigger house, faster car, better looking girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it is. That constant strive for materialistic wealth and that greed is instilled in us from an early age. That's what we should do. And I think it's really important for us as individuals, as we get older, we kind of realize that is so profoundly wrong. Or I think anyway.
Yeah, totally.
You need to take a step back. And I only learned that through travel, traveling to places like Pakistan or Nepal or Northern India or whatever it is. And you kind of realize that you only need so much to be sort of comfortable and safe. And anything else is, it is greed.
Did you have, when you climbed Everest the first time, was there a sense of, was it anticlimactic when you did it? Did you feel, was it what you wanted it to be, or was it?
Well, I was there for work. I mean, the first time I ever went to Nepal, Everest, I was there as a professional guide. Yeah. So I was there to fulfill the ambition and drive of the clients. Yeah. So, and we did that. We had a 100% success rate. All the clients got to the top safely and came back down again. So from my perspective, not only had I climbed the mountain, I got paid to do it, but from a sort of performance side of things, it couldn't be any better. If you have a satisfied customer client, you have fulfilled what you set out to do. We all went home having had a great expedition, all friends, all at the summit. Yeah. And it was great. And I loved it. And I think one of the reasons what makes me quite unusual is having done it once, I was very willing to do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, because normally it's
so dangerous. Like I would guess most people, when they've done it once, they go, I've done it, I don't need to do it again.
Yeah, I don't need to do it again. But then at some stage, I mean, what was the book called? Feeding the Rat. It's by Alaveras. And it's talking about Mo Antoine, who was a climber. And to paraphrase it, inside us, there's a rat, and the rat needs sustenance. And that can come from anything. It could come from, I don't know, drugs or alcohol, or in my case, my addiction is big mountains. Yeah. And the rat will be sated, and then a few weeks later, or months later, or a year later, the rat starts gnawing away. Yeah. And it needs to be fed again. And I think most people that climb Everest, they have a rat, and something needs to be fed to that rat for it to be happy. And it could be, it could be climbing another mountain. It could be sailing around the world. I mean, if you look at the majority of people that climb Everest, they have an adventurous streak in there somewhere. Yeah. And perhaps they're not climbing another mountain, but they're doing something else. They could be trekking to the pole, or they could be running the marathon to Saab, or whatever it is. Because the rat needs feeding. And we all have a rat.
Yeah, I love
Mine's called Arthur.
What's yours
you have a little hamster you put at your butt.
Mine's a guinea pig.
Yours. You're like you and Richard Gere.
It's an anally inserted guinea pig, but I'd rather not talk about
Guinea pig.
Yeah.
I had a guinea pig growing up called Captain Beaky. disappeared.
Captain
Yours are always
Beaky.
about captains. Like,
Yeah.
It disappeared. He disappeared one day. I was so gutted. I got up one morning. We had this big sort of hutch thing for it outside. I went to feed him in the morning, or her, whatever it was, and it wasn't there. It's just gone.
We
I
had
was so
a
upset.
guinea pig die as well.
Have you ever eaten guinea pig? You go down to Bolivia and
I
Ecuador
think I
places.
have actually. Yeah.
they eat
Yeah.
guinea pig.
No, don't say my guinea pig wasn't eaten. I didn't eat my guinea pig.
Where was yours? Bolivia.
No.
You ate it in Bolivia.
Oh, I ate it in Bolivia. Yeah. I should
Yeah.
point out I'm plant-based now. So
I think I
don't-
ate mine in somewhere in southwest London.
I don't feel happy with this. Talk about guinea pigs.
Guinea pig, yeah.
Captain Beaky he was so fluffy.
Yeah, I don't want to bring
You
up
could,
old.
you could sit there like Blofeld.
Yeah.
Just like stroke
Get
your,
it?
your
There is
guinea
no
pig.
way that you people walking around, you were stroking your guinea pig thinking you like Blofeld.
I have so many questions about Everest.
Yeah, I want to know this one.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
we're
a
going off
bit
on
obsessed with it.
tangents.
I have
But
so
really?
many questions.
Yeah, we can go as many tangents as you want. Tom is obsessed with Everest.
Well,
as
I've watched a lot of documentaries about it, and I've
What's your
so
favourite
many-
documentary?
When you say
About
documentary,
Everest.
you mean movies.
There's one on
Could be a movie.
There's one on Netflix that I watched pretty
Is
recently.
that Nims's one? The 14 8,000 meter peaks.
Yes.
Yeah, Nims
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Just quickly on that. Okay, I'm going to ask the Nims thing. Okay, Nims, if you haven't seen it, he climbed 14 peaks, a Netflix show. He did it with oxygen and all these different things. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a record to hold, or as a climber yourself, do you think he had an unfair advantage?
Well, I use oxygen. And I use oxygen
Sure.
because I'm working. So I have a duty of care to my clients. And what people don't really realize is oxygen does a number of things. It keeps you warm. But more than that, in the way that I facilitate my my clients, let's take a step back. When you don't use oxygen, your brain is being starved of oxygen.
Yeah.
And it affects your judgment. And I'm there to look after. I work in the service industry. I am looking after a paying client, and they need my utmost care and attention. And that's why I use oxygen. And each of my ascents has been climbed.
So when you say use
during
oxygen, it's you're using an oxygen tank.
yeah, so you literally have a tank on your back. It holds about 1,500 liters of pure oxygen, and it's on a direct feed, and it comes into an oxygen mask.
And is it
mixes
possible
with
to do
ambient
it
air.
without oxygen?
Totally. So 1978. So you've entered geekism now.
Here we go. Here we go.
I
Strap
know
in.
pretty much everything about this mountain.
To our listeners,
So-
if you see Kenton, he's honestly lit up. He
So,
can't,
so,
he
yeah,
can't
so,
wait.
so the audience can turn off now and come back in about 20 minutes.
No,
when we
let's hear
finish.
it all. I want to hear it all. Go.
So 1978, Reinhold Messner, the Italian mountaineer, and the Austrian Peter Habler were the first to climb Everest without supplementary oxygen. And before that point, people thought it wasn't possible.
Yeah.
It really was. It was such a tour de force. And then Messner went back about 2 years later, where it was 2 years later in the autumn, and climbed Everest from the north, from Chinese Tibet, via a new route on his own without oxygen. And you could argue that is or was the pinnacle of climbing on Everest. Nobody has done something in better style
Since then. Really?
Why?
Yeah.
Because it was so unheard of.
It was so unheard of. There's no one else on the mountain. New route, so nobody's ever climbed the route. No fixed lines, no Sherpa, no oxygen.
Wow.
Just Messner. Incredible. So that's like
Shackleton days.
yeah, exactly.
That is like that.
That's right up there. I was trying to think of an analogy. That's a really good
Yeah.
one.
Well
That's,
done.
but Shackleton's on his own.
Yeah.
Fucking
Yeah, it does
hell.
totally out there. Now, to go back to Nims, what Nims did, he raised the bar. And you need that in any sport or anything that you're doing. You need somebody every now and then to come along, like Messner and Habler did, and they raised the game. Endurance-wise, what Nims did, phenomenal. I mean, his times between some of the mountains, outrageous. Yes, he was using fixed rope. Yes, he was using oxygen. But I think if you removed those, what he did probably wouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
In fact, I said at the time, I went on record to saying, I don't believe Nims can do it. I think he's going to get his arse handed to him in Pakistan. And he proved me wrong. And I was the first to eat humble pie, quite a lot of it. And then interestingly, now that he's done it, he's proved it's possible. There's a relatively young Norwegian girl, Kristen, and she's trying to do the same thing. Only she wants to try to beat Nims's record.
Wow.
And she's on course at the moment to do all 14 in 6 months.
Wow.
That is insane. But when does the point come when, firstly, how much, firstly, how much does it cost to? People don't realize the cost of like climbing Everest or things. How much does it cost typically to climb Everest?
So Everest is going to be anywhere between about $35,000 and the sky's the limit. So the most expensive single operator on the mountain right now is NIMS because of his reputation, and he just went stratospheric with his Netflix thingy. And then, it's probably me. I'm not a cheap operator on that mountain because I work in a very,
and how many times a year will you do that?
Just the one time. I work with one client at any one time, bespoke the expedition, and that comes out of price. And it's significantly more than 35,000.
So
how much is it? If I'm asking you, if I say to you, Kenton, I'm going, Kenton, you and I, we're going to go climb Everest together. And I want to climb
bear
with
in
you.
mind that Jamie did sign a lucrative book deal, so
well, absolutely. So
he's got the
doubled.
cash.
No, I want to climb Everest with you.
Yeah,
and I want to do your only time, and I want to do it in 2024. What are you charging me?
Well, that's fantastic because it gives us a lead time because it's a project fee for the training and all that stuff. Minimum is starting price about 300,000, 250, 300,000.
Wow.
So,
that is insane. But also
I think it's insanely cheap.
Yeah, no, I do. But also, you're risking.
Do you pay that when you're down safely, or do you pay that up front?
No, I like it being paid up front.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's not a hitman. What
So maybe like a 50% deposit first, and then the second half.
That is amazing. And I suppose people want to do it with you, Kenton, is because you just know. It's like when you go and buy a car. In a sense, and not relating you to a car, but if you're going to go and buy a car, you want to buy a car that you know is going to drive well. Yeah, it's going to drive well. It's going to look good. It's going to all these things. You know what you're buying. So with you, what you're doing is you're buying that kind of
So what you're buying into
safety and hereditary and brand, right? You're buying into the brand, which is you. Or is that wrong?
Are you buying into a brand? I don't know if you're buying into a brand, but what you're buying 16 summits worth of experience. I mean, there's no other Western operator that's got that level of experience.
Have you done it the most times?
I haven't done it the most times. Like Kami Rita, the Sherpa, he's climbed it 26 times now.
Okay,
but in terms of a decision maker, somebody that can liaise with the client, spend time with the client, bolster the client's confidence, mindset when it needs coaching.
Yeah.
Because when I'm not climbing big mountains, I'm a performance coach.
Yeah.
And when you throw all that into the mix, then the main reason for failure on Everest is mindset. It's not the physicality of it. Yes, it's a physical task, but it's mindset. And you need to turn up to that mountain with a bulletproof mindset. And if there's any chinks in your armor, they are going to manifest themselves in quite an ugly manner quite quickly because there's downtime, you're navel gazing, you're looking at this bloody great mountain, there's a risk of death or avalanches or frostbite injuries, and your fingers are going to fall off or whatever it is. And that's going to chip away at your armor. And you need a guide, a leader that is there to work to your strengths, to nurture your weaknesses, and to keep your confidence high. And then, more than that, I mean, after me in terms of Western leaders, I think, what's his name? Garrett Madison's on 10 summits. So the gap between the experience that I have or anybody else on that mountain, even NIMS. I mean, NIMS has summited I think from 3 or 4 separate seasons. Now I've been there 16 seasons.
Wow.
That level of experience is unique. And there's no hacks to gaining that experience. There's no shortcuts.
No.
The generation certainly behind me are always looking at a hack, a shortcut to success. And more often than not, you got to put the time in. And if you put the time in, you're going to get the rewards. And by hiring me, that is a hack. Because I have that depth of experience.
Do you think you could take?
I'm going to bring you through the front door at the end of the trip.
Yeah. Do you think you could take anybody up there, or do they have to have a specific mindset?
No, I think mindset can be taught to a certain extent.
Teach that. Yeah.
I believe you can if somebody's open to it. Can you take anybody within reason? But that individual has to want to do it in the first place.
Is the mindset more important than physical?
No, 100%. Well, 100%.
Yeah.
David Goggins. You come across David Goggins?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. His book Can't Hurt Me. He talks about the weakness is the human mind.
Yeah.
It's not the human physicality. Yeah. And he pontificates a lot about the 30% rule. Your brain will tell you can't do any more at 30% of your physical attribute. So you got 70% of your physical performance is not being tapped into.
Yeah.
So if you relate that to Everest, the first thing that is going to crumble is your mindset.
Yeah.
Well, without a shadow of a doubt.
I've got so many questions.
I know. I got millions.
I've got about 8 questions in my head.
I've got
Eight,
I
only
think,
eight?
I think
Wow.
I've got 30.
I know.
It's like a game of chess.
I
I'm like,
know.
what do I ask
I
first?
just wanna-
It's just what is just so fascinating about you is yeah, I'm so interested in mindset as well, and what the mind can do. And David Goggins is a great example because he's this insane guy who, yeah, he basically says that your mind gives up before your actual body does. And people go, no, it's my body giving up. No, your mind is giving up.
Because your mind is telling your body to give up. Your mind is the inhibitor. And every now and then you get these people that come along that prove that he's right. So there's a professional cyclist, Jens Volke, the German, and he was the breakaway specialist. And his tagline was like #ShutUpLegs, because he would ride off the peloton, bury himself physically. And people say that he had a way of switching off the synapses between his brain and his legs, and he could turn off pain.
Is it called flow state?
Yeah, I suppose you could call it flow state. Yeah, but they were saying, or doctors were saying that he had the ability to turn off his pain receptors, because if you can endure pain, then your ability to push through that inhibitor, that blockage, is going to be enhanced.
Yeah.
And Jens is, was he the best cyclist? No, but his ability to ride away and be at the front all day long. And we all know that the pain threshold that cyclists go through.
Mad.
It's absolute madness.
It's crazy.
So if you can,
they're constantly at that brink of giving up almost the whole time. The whole time.
So if you can turn
I
it off.
didn't know cycling was such a
It's totally brutal.
painful thing.
It's like rowing, cycling, and I think like rowing and cycling are the two one. They're the constant that when you're underwater and you feel like you're drowning. That constant state of like I got to give up for the whole Tour de France. It's mad.
Yeah, it's totally brutal. Totally brutal. And he was like one of the like key protagonists of this sort of thing. So if you can tell your brain not to give in. I mean, like, you used to go running. You were at the Nationals. You're running around a track. Your lungs are burning. Your mind's saying, "I can't go any faster." That's your mind saying that. That's not your body. That's your mind. I had the pleasure of meeting Mo Farah for the first time on Sunday, and there you are. This tiny waif of a man that seemed to me quite shy, just in the corner with all these celebrities at the Queen's pageant. And I was just looking at him, just thinking, how do you make your body go so fast for so long? I mean, 5, 10K specialists. I mean, brutal distances. No, you look at him, he's stick thin.
But how?
But so it's his
all
mind.
mind,
It's
yeah.
his mind.
Yeah, but how do you do? You have someone. So you how do you teach that mindset? Because surely, from my experience with things, the only way you can teach someone is by exposing yourself to a situation, right?
I believe you're right. You got to expose yourself, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to expose yourself to Everest. You just need to go out there and experience it a few times. David Goggins, could go back to Goggins. He talks about it as a cookie jar. And every time you go out and stress yourself or experience something, you make a deposit into that cookie jar. And at some stage, you can put your hand in the cookie jar and take out. You can withdraw because you've been depositing in it all the time.
Yeah.
And then when you get into an uncomfortable situation, you can put your hand in the cookie jar and go, I remember being here before, or this is familiar. I know that I can get through this. And that's how you can push forward.
Have you found yourself on the side of the mountain giving pep talks to clients because they say they don't want to do it, they don't want to go any further?
Numerous times.
Yeah.
Not necessarily on Everest. I'm also an alpine guide, so I climb like the Eiger or Matterhorn and things like that.
Yeah.
And more perhaps on those mountains where the level of exposure and it's just the two of us, there's no fixed lines, and there's we don't necessarily have the infrastructural support that we do on Everest. And often you could be super early starts, you might be on the go for 10, 12, 14, 16 hours or whatever. And people have self-doubts. And this will start to show through, especially when they start to get physically tired. That's when it really manifests itself. And you got to stop and you got to bolster that confidence. And sometimes it's as simple as saying, you can. Because we get told so much, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't do this, or you shouldn't do this, or you're not allowed to do this. We hear it all the time. They're all negatives. Why not use the opposite? You can. You are allowed. You should.
Do you truly believe? Because I truly believe that as well. I get it in whatever it may be. I used to do a very simple one where I had a bit of a negative mindset, and instead of saying tomorrow's going to be a bad day, I'd say, actually, even though I didn't feel it, I'd be like, tomorrow's going to be a good day. I'd always tell myself that. And actually, you can train yourself to think more positively, even if you try and fool yourself. I feel like you can actually do that, but not a lot of people believe that.
No,
they think it's hippy-dippy.
I'm fully with you. And I think one of the big things, you talk about you can train yourself to do things. It's about making motivation into habit. Because, I'm the same. I got back from Everest, 2.5, 3 weeks ago, whenever. I go running pretty much every day. I run around the fields pretty much.
I can't wait to go and run with you. I'm so excited to go running with you.
Well, yeah, I
just do laps around Jamie's mum's house.
But pretty much, yeah. So I mean, that's where I first met Jamie's mum. I was out running one day, and there's this lady with a dog, and she stops and said, "Who are you, and what are you doing?" I'm like, I'm out running.
She said, "Get off my land."
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
She had a shotgun.
Yeah.
Get off my land.
And I've lost my train of thought now.
No, but you run right. No, but in terms of
mum.
No, but what we're saying in terms of it was that mindset where you.
So turning habit into motivation.
Yeah, that's exactly
it. So I get back from Everest and I've dropped out the habit of running because I've been out on Everest doing other stuff. And I go to bed at night and I think, right, tomorrow morning, because I always run in the morning. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to go running. Okay, so the motivation is high. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, I've got this to do, I've got that to do, I've got whatever to do. And I find any reason not to do it. So you've got to make it easy to yourself. And I learned this from Alex Gregory, the rower, the Olympic rower. And he leaves his kit by the door. So that's one excuse just taken away. So his trainers, his shirt and his shorts are by the door. So that's been taken away. But if you do it enough times and if you push yourself, that motivation, okay, I am going to go running, you slip your trainers on, you go out the door, turn that motivation into habit. Because once you have a habit, then you're in, and it just becomes the norm. Before I went to Everest, I ran 6 days a week, regardless. I'd drop the children off at school. I'd take the dog needs exercising. So there's another great excuse to get out and go running, get yourself a dog. Go running with a dog because he needs exercising or walking or something. So I might as well run him.
Yeah.
And I would get myself in a routine, into a habit. I go running after school drop off. I'm sat at my desk by like 9:30 in the morning, having showered, and I face the day ahead. That's a habit. And once you have a habit, it's easy.
Wow.
And that's turning motivation into habit.
How important is routine?
I think it's super important, and I've never had one.
No, nor have I.
And it's hard. I mean, I was chatting I was chatting to a friend the other day about something, and I used to live in Sheffield, and a lot of my mates had proper jobs, and they said the best thing for their climbing was routine, having a proper job, because they knew that on Tuesday and Thursday nights they would go down the climbing wall at 6 o'clock. And train for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I never had that because I've never had a proper routine. My life is all over the place. But then when I do find even a modicum of new routine, like the school drop off, the run the dog, and then sit at my desk at 9:30, then all of a sudden the habit forms.
Yeah, and you feel more purpose almost.
You have purpose, and it's easy to maintain because you know that every day you've got to, and then things hiccup that, for me at least from time to time, like, I've got to be in London early tomorrow morning, so I can't run tomorrow morning. And I only need 2 or 3 hiccups and I lose the habit. It's a little bit like trust. Trust takes a long time to form and it's really easy to break.
Yeah.
And habits are similar, or positive habits. I know like bad habits like smoking or alcohol addiction, they're really hard to break.
Yeah.
But habits take a while. Positive habits take a while. You got to put.
They say like 63 days or something like that.
As long as that.
I think it's 63 days to form a habit that if you constantly do it on a regular basis, 63 days. But it's like way quicker to break it, right? Like it takes, I don't know, 2 weeks or something.
It doesn't even take me that. I mean, I think everybody's different. But if I miss running 3 or 4 or 5 days,
what are your main positive habits? Is it mainly running, or do you have a lot of other things?
So I used to do an obscene amount of CrossFit. So I was in the local gym in Cirencester a lot. And one of the reasons why CrossFit worked for me is, it comes down to that competitiveness. Everybody at CrossFit says, you should be competitive with yourself, not for others. But you you're responsible for turning up. You make a pact with the other people.
Yeah.
You are going to turn up at 6 o'clock in the morning and train at CrossFit. And if you don't, you're shouted out. You're like, well, you weren't here.
It's like jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is the same sort of thing.
Yeah,
With jiu-jitsu, you're meant to turn up.
Yeah, you turn up. It's an obligation to turn up. If you make a pact for with somebody, okay, Jamie, I see you at CrossFit, or even if it's a run.
That's a good thing about.
I see you at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'll meet you outside the gate by your mum's house, and we go for a 10K.
Yeah.
I've made that pact with you. We have made that together. If I don't turn up, I am letting you down.
Someone's responsible for you.
Someone's responsible for it.
It's because if you're just going on for a run on your own, it's so easy to not do it.
Yeah.
But if you're meeting someone.
And I'm the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it? The November Project. It sort of span out of I think it started in New York.
Yeah.
And that was exactly that.
Yeah.
And they have the bounce. So everybody gets together and they do this massive bounce before it starts. So everybody's really close in, their body contact, and they simply do a bounce. And the whole thing was you made a pact with somebody to go to the November Project. It was essentially an informal run club.
Yeah.
And if you didn't turn up, you were
You're letting everyone down.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's a collective.
Yeah.
And collectives they're powerful.
Kenton, we're going to have to stop there for part one.
Oh, you've got two parts. This is why you're the best podcast. You don't have one, you get two for the price of one.
But listen, I want to come back in part two.
Well, you get enough bloody revenue from me through your sweeties. I mean, we're a plant-based family.
Yeah.
How many plant-based sweets are there that children
Damn
like?
straight. And you better keep buying them. Keep buying them.
We want to make them cheaper, man. Do I get free ones? Haven't been on a podcast?
Maybe. And of course you do. Come back in part two. We'll have a big question for you. And also, I'm going to explain the first time I ever contacted you, but I don't think you remember it.
Oh, God.
Coming back in part two.
Under pressure.
Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to part two of Private Parts. Still here with Kenton. Cool.
Do we have a part three as well?
Well, listen, we just said just then.
8 parts.
We just said that we have so many questions for you that possibly we're just going to keep going on. So we're just going to keep going until
we drop down?
Until we drop dead. That's what's going to happen.
Podcast, you drop.
Kenton, it's all about mindset with podcasts. You're going to want to stop. At some point, you're going to want to stop, but you've got to just keep
We're only reaching 30% of our capacity.
Yeah.
David Goggins
At some
style.
point, we'll start shouting you to keep going.
Keep going. Keep talking.
So we do it in a proper Goggins style.
Yeah.
Kenton, you won't remember this, but you might remember this.
I'm feeling under pressure on this
Okay,
question.
but it's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing of me. So my mum said to me, Penny, who you know, said to me, I have just met a very good-looking man.
Oh, that's what I remember.
Do you remember that? Yeah, she said that. I met a very good-looking man, and his name's Kenton Cool, and he's an explorer, and he lives in the village that we live in, and we're now friends. And he lives on the corner. I went, okay, Mum, all right, let's go. He said, I'm going to invite him round at some point. I went, all right, fine. I went off to a wedding, and I went to this wedding. I got smashed and very drunk. And on the way back in the cab, I said, oh, excuse me, you're going to drive me back to this village. And the taxi driver said, Kenton Cool lives there.
Oh, really?
And I said, I know Kenton. And the taxi driver said, yeah, do you really? I went, yeah, I know him. He went, oh, I've got his number. And I went, well, let me voice note him. So I took the taxi driver's phone and voice noted you in the back of the taxi saying, hi, Kenton, I hope you're well. Jamie voice noting you from the back. And we had never met before. And we had never met. I don't know if you ever received it.
That?
Or the taxi driver deleted it when I got out. I don't know what happened.
Well, I don't remember receiving it, but the rest of the story makes sense. I was literally running around the fields and bumped into your mother.
Yeah, and this is what she said to me. She said to me that I met this guy and he's a bit of a legend.
I like the good looking bit. You can.
I just chucked that. I lied. I just chucked that in there to make you feel
Jamie
good.
chucked that in.
I literally
We're
made
so
that up.
early in a relationship and you're lying to me
I
already.
made it up off the top of my head.
That normally
Threw it
takes it. You had me. You had me there.
Hey,
I hope you had a hangover after that.
I had a big hangover and I felt a little bit embarrassed. And then I
Your
thought,
mum's
actually,
house beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great house.
Yeah.
It's a great house.
Yeah, the children. What did the children call it? They call it the not the special barn.
Is that what they say?
Something like that. Posh barn. Their posh barn. That's what they call it. The posh barn.
Anyone I think who lives near
posh
Bybury,
barn.
it's in Bybury. It's pretty posh, I think. But I want to ask you a big question, which you can answer how you want to answer. You do all these things. You climb all these different mountains, and you've done Everest 16 times, and you've done the north face of what is it? The hard one. The hard
north face of the Eiger.
The north face. That's one of the
finds. Yeah,
that's insane. You've done all these ones. It's a numbers game, right? Have you ever nearly died, and have you had someone who has died before?
Yes, the answer is yes. I've had somebody die in my arms, high on, well, not Everest, it was a nearby mountain called Lhotse. It wasn't a client, it was somebody that I came across, a Taiwanese climber called Mr. Lee. And he'd been left by his logistical team. It just somebody did Lhotse, fourth highest mountain in the world. It was coming down, my understanding was. And I came onto the scene about 2 or 3 days later. So he'd been in a tent for 2 or 3 days, suffering from high altitude, cerebral and pulmonary edema, so it's swelling on the brains and fluid on the lungs. And I looked after him overnight. We injected him with dexamethasone, which is a steroid-based drug, and he was unconscious when I came across. He's still alive, but unconscious. And then overnight, he, after we injected him, he became semi-coherent, but then. Yeah, I mean, he passed away, literally in my arms. I ended up trying to do CPR on him in the morning and things like that. So, unfortunately, death is something which we encounter not regularly, but it's all around us, as climbers, especially if you're operating in the super high mountains. There's no rescue there.
Yeah.
You can't get a helicopter into 8,000 meters on Everest, for instance.
Because the altitude just won't allow it.
The altitude won't allow it.
This is my question, because I remember from the documentary where they said, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but on the final day, they say to you, if anything happens, we can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
We are going to have to.
And that's a really interesting learning experience, because with everything we do, I speak a lot to organizations.
Yeah.
Keynote speaking or motivation or performance coaching or whatever it may be. And it's a really hard thing to put across that we need to be responsible for our actions. I think it's just a moral trait that most of us should have. And on Everest, we are responsible for what we do. Nobody's going to come in and bail us out. Nobody's going to come in, international rescue and whip you off on a long line on a helicopter, which you can in the European Alps or you can in Scotland. There's going to be no rescue team coming for you. So the consequences of your actions and your decisions are very much on your shoulders. And that's something which I believe we lack somewhat in everyday life, because there's always somebody that we can offset blame to, or we can chunk a decision that sort of sideways, or we can default on something, knowing that there's going to be a modicum of safety or a safety net to look after us. On Everest, that does not exist. On Everest, my actions or my decisions, because I am the key decision maker there, my decisions are far reaching. If I get it wrong, somebody's going to goddamn die.
Yeah.
So everything that you do needs to be pinpoint accurate. Yeah. You need to know the client really well. You need to know the weather forecast. You need to know your team super well. You need to know the route super well. And you need to be confident in your actions. Because otherwise it's going to go shit shape, and it's going to go shit shape pretty damn quickly.
Yeah.
Does it go pear shaped pretty quick?
Yeah, everything just compounds. It's like, and when you make a mistake, you're like, oh, okay, damn, I made a mistake. Generally mistakes come in 2 or 3s or 4s, and they might not be big ones, but Everest will not tolerate even the smallest of errors. There's very little safety net up there. I mean, we try to install something, obviously. But
so the guy in this documentary was saying that a lot of the times the reason what goes wrong is that people get to the summit and they spend too long on the summit, and then when they come back,
there is a little bit of that.
Is that a thing?
I think the biggest thing, accidents generally happen on the way down.
Yeah,
and it happens for a number of reasons. People are physically tired, but certainly on Everest, there's a mental thing. People often, not all the time, they mentally check out.
Yeah.
They get to the top, they're like, oh, I've got there. It's like years worth of training or monetary investment or time, or maybe it's a lifelong dream and ambition. Imagine you just fulfilled a lifelong dream and ambition. You're like, oh, thank goodness, we're there. But you still got to get down.
Yeah.
And getting down is harder sometimes, isn't it?
It's way harder. Because I mean, even imagine you're walking up a hill. Okay, if you trip over, what happens? You fall into the hill.
Forward, yeah.
Now you're walking down a hill and you trip over. You fall out from the hill.
Oh my God! And you slide, right?
You're going to slide. You're going to like sort of cascade down or barrel roll down. You just look at the cheese rolling in Gloucestershire, that sort of quaint thing. I mean, watch everybody fall down that hillside.
Is that what it's literally like? You just
very much
slide.
so.
You just go.
Yeah, if you fall out, okay, you clip to a fixed line.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Sherpa team will put a fixed line in place and you clip to it.
Yeah.
But the stanchions, the anchor points between the fixed line might be 100, 150 meters apart. So at the very least, you're going to go like 100 meters.
Yeah.
Before you're going to stop. And then it's going to be a pretty hard stop because your little lanyard with your carabiner on is going to come up hard against an ice screw or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do a lot of people die by just falling, just going?
I think the main reason for fatalities on Everest is I think people check out.
Wow.
They sit down and they just think, okay, well, I just spend like 20 minutes sat here.
And they fall asleep. And
they potentially fall asleep. Or they bought into a cheap logistical outfit and they're not looking after them. Or maybe they run out of oxygen. Because if you run out of oxygen, you're not going to die immediately.
Yeah.
But it's going to slow everything down. And then when it gets dark, everything gets compounded by a factor of 100. And then the temperature drops. It's called a death zone for a reason.
And is it right that you when you're climbing it and coming back, you see a lot of bodies?
You do see bodies. Oh, you don't see a lot of bodies, but you see bodies,
and they're just there, and they're like.
I mean, there's one just underneath the Hillary Step, for instance.
Yeah,
and you almost have to climb over.
Yeah.
There's an American climber from 2019, and you almost got to climb over it.
What?
And
that is crazy.
Yeah, until this year, he was still fixed. The guy's called Don, or was called Don. He's still fixed to the fixed line, so he's attached to the ropes, so body can't be blown off, it can't disappear somewhere, and it's in a place that there's not going to be any snow accumulation, so it's not going to be buried by snow. And it was my mistake because I was focused on other things this year. I didn't forewarn my client this year that the body was there, and it really freaked her out.
Yeah, I would.
And understandably so, because it's quite graphic.
And because it's so cold, are they preserved?
To an extent, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so instead of decomposing the body, I forget what the word is. It kind of all tightens up, and you can still see skin features and things like that. I mean, I try to avoid being too invested into it.
Yeah,
because it's quite ghoulish and quite voyeurism.
Yeah,
Obviously, I totally get it. But also, as I said before, like this numbers game, right? And I couldn't even possibly imagine how professional you are up there. I would be impeccable. But when it comes to that numbers game, the weather turns, something happens, avalanche, whatever it is, all the factors that you add in, do you sometimes weigh up the risk that you have as well? That perhaps, have you ever had a moment where you went, shit, this is pretty scary right now, and I realize I'm in a pretty hairy place?
Yeah, it happens all the time within climbing. You got to weigh up the risk. And this is no disrespect to the risk on any mountain. But arguably the most dangerous thing is jumping in a taxi and getting to Heathrow Airport.
No ways, more than that.
Because danger is all around us. And I think what happens here at home, we get complacent to it. So we're not alert to it. On Everest, we're going to be alert to the dangers all the time.
Yeah.
We know that mountain can kill us in a blink of an eye. Yeah. So because of that, we have safety parameters as best we can in place. We're alert to it. We're focused. We know what the consequences are. I could finish this podcast and walk out with Dan and we're high-fiving saying that was really good fun and off to meet a client now for a drink. And I'm not concentrated, I'm not focused, and I walk out into the road and boom.
Yeah.
Now, you said that you were in Spain at the weekend. And it's just simple things like the traffic comes from the opposite direction in Spain.
Yeah.
You switch off just for the moment and you make a mistake.
Yeah.
Whereas on Everest, if you make a mistake, it's probably going to hurt you in some manner. But you are, you're in a heightened state of consciousness to those dangers. But there are dangers that you can't mitigate against. I was on K2 last year.
That's hard, right? That's notoriously hard.
It's dangerous. Yeah, it's hard and it's dangerous. We were really lucky.
What's K2?
K2, second highest mountain in the world. So
just stay out of this conversation.
Sorry, more.
So K stands for,
Jamie's been up K2.
K stands for Karakoram. So it was a designation when it was first.
Okay.
And we had a really nice, great climb of the mountain. Summit day was unbelievable. I say to people, we went there expecting to have to slay dragons, and instead we found sheep. It was K2 had kind of rolled over and it was having a tummy tickle. until the last day. And we were coming down from the summit, and we had stopped at Camp 3, and the next day we're coming down what's called the Black Pyramid, and it's all this loose rock, and rocks beginning to fall down, and the rivulets of water. And we're coming down to Advanced Base Camp on the last little bit, literally, we get down to Advanced Base Camp and we're safe. And the whole slope avalanched, like thousands of tons of snow. And if we were 5 minutes faster or 5 minutes slower, myself and the client, we'd be dead.
What?
It's simple as that.
Just luck.
It's just pure luck, because there's some things in the mountains, objective danger, that you cannot mitigate against.
Yeah.
Now you could say, and if there's mountain guys listen to this, they probably say, well, Kenton should have stayed at Camp 1 or Camp 2 and wait for it to freeze overnight. And so there are ways that you can navigate that, but at the same time, you're weighing up all these decisions which are constantly bombarding you, and you're trying to work out in the moment what the best decision is. And in my mind, it was, because Camp 1 had been obliterated by rockfall. I mean, our tent that we had slept in 2 nights previously looked like someone had just been out there with a shotgun and just like sprayed it, because there's like rocks are coming through the fabric. Where my head had been, there's a big rock there. And it's like, well, we're not going to stay here. Yeah, we're going to head down. And if we use the islands of safety, we're going to get down. And then boff, the whole slope avalanches.
That is insane.
It's dangerous. I'm not disrespecting the mountain and the danger that it holds. And I'm, a father to 2 relatively young children, and a husband, and
a friend to me,
things, a friend to you, and
a friend to Penny,
a very good friend to Penny.
When you're up the mountain,
a handsome friend to Penny, no less.
When you're up the mountain and something goes wrong, do you think of Penny? Is that the first thing you think?
She's on speed dial.
Yeah. You think, what would Penny, if I went, what would Penny do?
But mainly because I'm thinking about the inn to Jamie.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
You could take Candy Kittens up as sugar.
Well, I'm waiting for a sponsorship.
Done.
Do you take like sweets up with you for sugar? And do you
I mean, sort of. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own little tipple on Everest, whatever it may be.
Yours is Candy Kittens.
No, but mine's now Candy Kittens.
Yeah. Where do you? I got so many more questions. Where do you? If you're up the mountain.
Don't say I love Candy Kittens.
Yeah. I love Candy Kittens. When you're up the mountain, I love. When you're up the mountain, where do you, and you're going through, if you need to take a shit.
I knew you were going to ask
Sorry,
that.
I need to ask that.
Yeah,
if you need to take a shit, what happens? What do you do?
Well,
you're freezing.
It depends where you are.
You're up at the top. Or near the top.
Well, I mean, a lot of people take Imodium. They bung themselves up on summit push.
Really?
Yeah, to avoid exactly that is. So a friend of mine once said the hardest thing in mountaineering is trying to get 3 inches of dick out of 8 inches of clothing. Because you have these huge down suits on, and
such a good saying.
And it's like -40, and everything gets a bit frozen. And then you've got a harness on, and you're trying to operate your zipper, and then you're scrummaging around inside. And that's if you're a guy. You imagine the issues if you're a girl.
Surely you can't get Bear Willie out at the top of a mountain. Surely it's too cold.
Bear Grylls Willie. Where did Bear Grylls come into it?
Can you not get Bear's Willie out?
Surely you can't get that out at the top of a mountain.
What, Bear's Willie?
You can.
Is it too cold, surely?
Well, when the sun comes up, it's surprisingly warm on Everest. But if you need a pee-pee, you need a pee-pee.
And you can't pee in the suit, can you? You can't like...
No, God, no. I mean, a friend of mine wears a nappy.
I was going to say,
like a male
that's
sort of incontinence nappy thing. But I can't think of anything worse. How did we get onto this? Normally this happens at schools, okay? When you're in preschool, the school kid will ask, well, how do you go to the loo up there, Kenton?
Our two questions have been, have you ever died? Have you nearly died? And how do you go for a poo?
Okay.
Is this the most high intellect podcast you've been on?
But if you want to stick on the poo question, I got a great, when I broke my legs, no, we won't go there.
No, I do want to go there. No, it's true, because I want to get into this. Just quickly before we get into the... we'll explain that, because... Well, firstly on K2, this is the last thing I want to say about K2 before we get onto your legs. You broke them, and you were told you could never walk again. But get ready for this. Or your heels you broke. But when on K2, there's the incredible story, which you'll know very well, Touching the Void. About the two...
Joe Simpson and Simon Yates. They're actually on a mountain called Cerro Grande down in Peru. But go on.
Okay, fine. I thought it was always a mistake. But they were climbing up, and the story goes as they were attached, they got stuck somewhere, so they fell asleep. And in the middle of the night, they attached themselves to each other. And in the middle of the night, one of them woke up, and his friend had fallen off a ravine.
Yeah, so essentially what was happening, Joe, I know them both. Joe and Simon were climbing. They did a hard new route, coming down in a bit of a storm, and Joe went over an ice cliff and badly broke his leg. And then what happened was this is a great example about the whole David Goggins 30% thing.
Yeah.
Because now one's got a completely shattered leg. They're in a storm, high on the mountain, and they start working together, and Simon starts lowering Joe systematically down a steep snow slope because Joe can't walk. And at some stage in the storm, in the whiteout, in extremis, Simon lowers Joe over a big ice cliff. They can't do anything about it. He's just hanging there in free space. It's a fantastic sort of documentary film.
Yeah.
If you're not seeing this one,
Touching the Void.
Touching the Void
Yeah.
is harrowing. And
It's
it's
unbelievable.
true.
It's
And
unbelievable.
it's true. So
Okay.
anyway, cut long story short, what Simon does in the end, he whips out his penknife and he cuts the rope.
Yeah, because he's being dragged off.
He's being dragged
off.
He's been hit by avalanches. He's been dragged off and he cuts the rope and Joe smashes into a crevasse. And I won't ruin the story for you.
No, but do. And then,
Joe goes, Simon comes down, no sign of Joe, shouts in the crevasse, no sign of Joe. And at some stage, Simon just thinks, I need to save myself. So he heads back to base camp. 3 or 4 days later, as they're packing base camp up to leave, Joe crawls in to base camp
yeah.
with a shattered leg. And he's essentially crawled for 3 days across, without food, without water, without shelter, across this hideous glacier moraine to come into base camp, and then they get him out.
It's
on the back-
insane.
on the
But
back
it's
of a
the
donkey.
story of like going back to Goggins, that mentality. He said to himself, if I can get 20 meters there, if I can get to that spot, that would be okay. He'd get there, then he'd do the same thing. Yeah. But my question is that in that situation, would you have done the same thing?
Oh, again, I mean, it's in the moment.
In the moment,
and,
right?
and they were both quite young. I think Simon was 24. And the climbing community has pontificated over this 4 years. It was Simon the villain. He was known as Slasher Yates for a while.
Yeah,
and all these
he
sorts
had a
of
really
things.
tough time.
And when they refilmed the documentary, I remember having a beer with him, and he was mentally scarred by revisiting what had happened. If you speak to Joe about it, I interviewed Joe, on my own podcast a couple of years ago, and he would openly say, by cutting the rope, Simon saved my life. Because without doing so, they probably would have both died.
Wow.
Now, is there techniques that they could have employed to get round the knot being jammed? Yes, they could. But in the moment, and that's, with clarity of thought, sitting here in your beautiful studio, looking back retrospectively, could they have done something else? Yes, they could have done. But put yourself into that crisis, and what would you have done? I mean, who knows?
Fight or flight.
It's that insane moment.
And it's a fact. If you're not seeing it, Touching the Void, watch it tonight.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I will. That sounds
it's
amazing.
insane.
It's harrowing.
But Kenny, you had this moment where you jumped off something.
I fell off something.
You fell off something, but you were told you were never going to walk again. What happened?
Okay, so I was in North Wales.
What did you fall off? A mountain?
I fell off a rock face in North Wales.
Oh my God.
Trying to climb.
Not funny, Tom.
Sorry.
Well, it is funny in a
Tom,
way.
it's not
because,
funny.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. What's that line from Top Gun? You're cashing checks that your ego's whatever, and it's a bit like that. And
It's good that the one time you were injured was in Wales. It wasn't even in Nepal.
I know. You couldn't make it up, could you? And it's in North Wales and ended up in Bangor Hospital of all places.
I've been to a nightclub there.
Well, in Bangor.
Yeah.
How was it for you?
Fantastic.
You were probably, was it one of the ones you were paid to go to?
Yep, I was.
Yeah,
I did a PA in Bangor. It was great.
Ah.
Wait, hold on, I don't want to ruin your
Big student thingy there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so wait. I fell off, And it's a great learning experience because I didn't really want to be there. Okay, so this is my competitive streak being destructive.
Yeah.
So we're in there to pick up sponsorship kit to go on a big expedition to Pakistan, which we were leaving the following week. And a friend of mine, he jumped on quite a hard climb called Ride the Wild Surf, the Colossus Wall in North Wales, in the slate quarries. And the weather wasn't great. There's a little bit of drizzle around, and it wasn't a great day to go climbing. And all I wanted to do was go to the cafe and drink tea or coffee or whatever. But my friends were going climbing, and I wanted to be number one. I wanted to be the best. So if they're climbing, I'm going to climb. And they jumped on a quite hard climb. So I said to my girlfriend at the time, let's do this one. It's even harder. And I got about 15, 20 feet up, and I broke a hold. So a piece of rock broke, and I didn't have any protection in, and I hit the floor.
How far did you fall?
About 15 feet, not far, but onto a hard surface. And I wasn't expecting it, so there's no recoil in your
Sounds
legs.
quite far.
It was far enough.
Yeah, 15
it was far
feet
enough.
sounds
And I
really
shattered
far.
both my heel bones and completely buggered them. So my right one was in 14 pieces.
Oof.
And I was told that by the first consultant, that's it. You're shagged. You're not going to walk without a stick. You're probably going to have modified shoes. You're not going to run again. You're definitely not going to climb. And it crushed me.
Yeah.
Utterly crushed me. And
What does that do to someone who is so all about being able to
it's crushing.
walk?
My purpose had been removed. And loads of people talk about purpose. What's your purpose in life? And I was part of this amazing community, this anarchistic community that is the climbing community. It was my social life. It was my active life. I was 22 years old. And somebody comes in and removes all of that. And I talk a lot about the importance of ambition, the importance of purpose and dreams and drive. And somebody removed that from me. Whether he was right or wrong telling me that, he removed that sense of purpose. And I think deep down, retrospectively, it lit something. I didn't want to prove anybody wrong, but that fear of failure, that fear of not having a community anymore, the community that I loved, I couldn't risk losing that. And that was the drive to get back on my feet. And through hard work and, hats off to the NHS, all the rehab was on the NHS. And if you listen to this, my physio that now lives in Barbados, we're still in contact. She was fantastic, and the numbers of times I literally fell over on the parallel bars. I was in a wheelchair for months. I had 3 operations. Wow. Yeah, it was hard.
Did you?
But the thing is, I wouldn't change a thing because it was such a learning experience for somebody so young. It was such a learning experience because I thought I was bulletproof.
What was your mental state at that point?
Fragile.
Yeah.
Very fragile.
Depressed?
I think in and out. Yeah. Well, without a shadow of a doubt. Because everything you stand for has been removed. Whether it has or it hasn't, you believe it because somebody that is in a position of authority comes in and says, you can't. And this is why I said earlier, the power of vocabulary and the way that things are presented, instead of you can't, you shouldn't, you can, you should.
But it's interesting. It's a unique mentality because someone that young, 22 years old, that happens to you and you're told those kind of things, you believe it. You didn't believe it. And actually, then when you slip into those
I think it's the case, I couldn't believe it because it removed everything I stood for.
Yeah, because also when you slip into those moments of depression, which can happen very easily in that situation, your lack of motivation goes, but you just had to fight on. You fought on. And it's such a message to other people out there that, similar things happen in life. Yes, okay. Losing your purpose, so someone could say, well, losing my parent or whatever is way worse and that's thrown me into. But that fighting attitude you have to keep hold of. Whatever you are.
I think you summed it up really well because all I wanted to do was stand up to start with. Stand up. Everything was focused on standing up. When do these casts come up and I become weight bearing? And I remember even before the doctors took the cast off, I was like pushing myself up out my wheelchair, holding onto a table and just letting go momentarily. And that was a massive win. That was everything. It's like, oh my God, I stood up 3 seconds, 2 seconds. That was a win. There were those small wins. And then when the cast came off and I was on the parallel bars, I would just let go and just fall into my arms of the physio because I just could not walk.
How long were you like that for?
I was in a wheelchair for four months.
Oh my God.
And imagine, so I moved back into my parents', which was just outside London. And I remember being mobile for the first time. I got rid of the wheelchair and I'm like, okay, I'm going out in London. I'm gonna have some beers with some mates and I'm on crutches and I'm all over this. So imagine, but I couldn't walk on crutches. What I used to have to do, the crutches would go in front of me and then I'd shuffle towards the crutches. So I couldn't, I didn't have one good leg to swing through. And my mother dropped me off at West Ruislip tube station. I'm coming into Notting Hill. I'm gonna go out on the beers with some friends in Notting Hill. And I get off the tube and I'm faced with an escalator. And I'm looking at this thing thinking, shit.
Yeah.
What do I do? And I'm looking at, and about 3 trains worth of people come past. And I'm just stood there looking at the escalator because I know that if I put my crutch on the escalator, it's going to move and I'm going to fall over.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find a solution. And I don't have one. So in the end, I put the crutch on it, it moves, I fall over. I'm lying on the escalator and then it hits me. What happens at the top? Is it going to eat me? So I get to the top and I crawl off.
That's amazing.
And I'm lying on the floor and I can't stand up because I need something to hold on to.
Yeah.
And people are walking around me. They're like looking at me and since I'm some like
Who's
hobo.
this drunk idiot.
Yeah, he's this drunk idiot. And I'm lying there and finally somebody stops and helps me up.
Wow.
and learning things like that about society. I mean, it's a funny story. I mean, it's a true story. It's a funny story. But people were walking around me, and I'm lying there. I'm looking at people saying, "Can you help me up?" And then eventually somebody did stop. You know, I got on a tube one day, 2 crutches, and there's a free rush hour, and there's a free chair in the middle of the carriage. And I look at the chair, and I look up, and there's a guy in a suit. He looks at me, he looks at the chair, looks at me, he looks at the chair, and he races me to the chair. And of course, he wins. He's got an unfair advantage. And the paper goes up, and he hides behind the paper because he's clearly embarrassed. And then a girl sat next to him makes a big show of, "Have my seat."
Wow.
"Take my seat." And she gets up, and I'm like, no, you know, you sit down. And she's like, "No, I insist." You know, kind of looking over the paper at the guy. And that's the differences between good people and people that really don't care.
Yeah.
You know,
Just out for themselves.
Yeah. You know, go back to that first part of the podcast. You know, maybe he's all about greed. He's all about himself. He's all about the individual. You know, he's not about the community. He's not about the culture of the collective.
Yeah.
But we go back far enough, we're tribal. And the tribe's all about the collective. It was amazing being in a wheelchair. I mean, I wouldn't have missed it for
that's insane. Yeah, it's one of the. They always say some of the worst things that happen to us are sort of our big rewards, right? We learn the best from them. When did you, being such a kind of...
I didn't tell my poo story from hospital.
Oh yeah, what's the poo story?
I might keep that up.
You're gonna save it to the end. When you're such a competitive person, when you are this sort of ferocious sort of guy just going straight for it, how did you learn vulnerability or to be vulnerable?
I'm still learning.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can definitely sense that probably with you would be a hard thing to let out because you have to be so sure in what you do. Every decision you make is about being sure of it. So vulnerability doesn't really come into play there because you can't be vulnerable. So for you to show vulnerability would be very hard to do that.
Yeah, I'm a pretty emotional guy. I mean, I do show emotion, but what I'm really bad at is not necessarily addressing what it is. I'm not good at addressing the source of the emotion, be it positive or negative. I mean, I remember once. I mean, and my wife, who she's also a performance coach and borderline therapist in many ways. Who takes a lot on from me.
Yeah.
We were in Dubai once, and I'd just come back from Everest, and I lost a friend on Annapurna in Yaki. And I'm trying to process it. And she was like, well, when was it? 2007, I think, Iñaki died. So a long time, 2008, I think it was, because we were buying an engagement ring. And Jazz was saying, you cannot keep simply putting the darkness in the cupboard. Because I would just bottle it up, put it in the cupboard, slam the door shut, and hope to Christ that the door never opens. Yeah. And she was just saying, at some stage, that door is going to crash open and there's going to be a tsunami.
Yeah.
Now, not just a trickle, a tsunami of negative darkness from your past. And is that at that point, I started to try to address all the bad stuff that happened, the loss of friends, or being on Annapurna 3 and thinking that John's going to die and not dealing with that, and the impact that had on the relationship between John, myself, and Ian, the three of us were climbing that mountain.
Wow.
And all these things. And my inability to address those things emotionally, because I'm not great at showing vulnerability. I'm not great at sitting down and saying, I'm struggling with, can you help? And I'm only just coming to terms with that. And that's been a short form journey of the last 3 or 4 years. Now, I'm 48.
It's a generational
and only
thing.
for the last 3 or 4 years have I been investing in myself. I mean, if a friend comes to you and says, I need help, of course you're going to invest time into him or her.
Totally.
So why don't we do it to ourselves?
Do you think with your clients that you take up the mountains, do you think it helps to be vulnerable with them as well?
Oh, that's a deep question.
Do you think it's because
there's an expectation for the guide to be bulletproof?
Exactly. That's what you would assume.
That's why I was saying that it must be hard for you, because I don't want to. You're for your clients, you're not human. You are human, but you're not. They don't regard you as human. It's like police officers. or
But I
people
wonder
in the
whether
army,
it would
or
be like.
they're not
I
human.
wonder
You're-
whether it would bond you more to a client if you
Would,
were
I'm
honest.
sure.
or-
I'm sure it
but
would.
the thing we have to
Yeah.
remember, I mean, I spent 2 or 3 years working with a client before I go to Everest. So,
Yeah.
so we've had a journey before we even get there. And through that journey, we have bonded. I
you
like
get
to
a
think,
connection.
Yeah, I like to think that my clients are friends.
Yeah.
And great example, I'm meeting a client after this because we're talking about the next project. And when he came to Everest with me, his daughter, he's got a daughter and a son, they had my number. Now, if they wanted to call me about a fear or concern that they had, they don't need to speak to dad to come to me. They can come straight to me. So
Yeah.
in that period of investment, I think to a certain extent, vulnerability is shown. Because you can't hide it forever from somebody, and we get yourself in these predicaments, and you come out the other end, and you're like, well, that worked or that didn't work, and you sit down and you process it. But I think on Everest there is that expectation that I am bulletproof, because the client is going to be leaning on me to a certain extent. When things are out of his or her comfort zone, they need that confidence boost from me. This is going to be okay because, or I'm seen to be the pillar. That emotional crutch that they need. Yet when I come home, there is the danger that just crumbles and just.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm super lucky to have jazz as my emotion. It's perhaps a bit unfair as their emotional crutch. And every now and then it does manifest itself, and it's just like the emotion just pours out.
Yeah, it does, and it would
Christ.
do, and it becomes like a waterfall, right? And it does come up when you have to hold so much in.
And it's got to be, it's self-investment.
It must be pretty emotional with the client when you go up and come back and you've done it safely and everything went well.
Oh, it's
It must
great,
be
yeah. But
pretty
there's an emotion of elation.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I posted something on social media on the gram the other day, and of just the emotional release when we got back down. Essentially off the fixed lines into the Western Coombs. So we were essentially safe on Everest.
Yeah.
And a number of people were saying, wow, you can just feel the emotion coming through this post. And that's relief, the wave of relief. But that dark skeleton, which is in the cupboard behind me, or in my cupboard at home, I haven't addressed that. And that is real vulnerability. And that's real strength to go to those places, to address those.
Yeah, but it's vulnerability to even speak about it, right? And that's a great thing, because I think
it's a great starting point, and it's something which I think it's cliche, but I think guys, certainly of a certain generation, we're not great at showing that. I was in India once with what's his name? I forget Jeff McDonald, who speaks a lot about mental health, certainly in guys. He's this big South African alpha male, rugby playing, beer drinking, and one day he just got crushed. He said he couldn't get out of bed, and he said, "Look at me. I'm not somebody that suffers from mental illness, or am I?" And he now champions dialogue. As simple as dialogue.
Yeah, that's great.
To be able to sit down with somebody and say, Jamie or Dan or whoever, Amy, I'm going through this. I just need somebody to be non-judgmental. I don't need advice. Not necessarily, but I just need someone to talk to.
Yeah, it's so true.
Do you think there's like your motivation for getting into doing the mountaineering in the first place? Do you think that comes from, like, for example, I'm a comedian, do stand up, and a lot of comedians, there's a reason.
I thought he was a comedian.
Yeah, you wouldn't have thought, right?
Exactly, yeah.
You wouldn't have bloody thought.
But there's a reason why, like, a lot of comedians start doing stand up. There's some sort of like inner,
wanting to be loved, right?
There's a reason why they feel the need to do that. Do you think it's a similar thing with mountaineering? There's like an inner reason why they feel they have to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think everybody has their own reasons for doing something. I don't think mine was emotionally driven to get into mountains.
Yeah.
I think I'm definitely emotionally stunted, perhaps, in terms of being able to vocalize how I'm feeling. Not necessarily what I'm thinking, but how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I was very shy growing up. Had issues like engaging with other people sometimes, which is odd now because
it's odd now, right?
Yeah, because I can stand on stage
yeah.
and quite happily talk to a boardroom with people, or I can speak to 1,000 people. But I'm speaking about my specialist subject, me and Everest and whatnot. And I got a couple of friends who are who are comedians. And
Am I one of them now?
Not yet.
well, how quickly does one become a friend?
I think really quick after a podcast, other podcasts, that's a great medium because you sit with someone you wouldn't never have this intimate conversation with. That's why I love podcasting so much, because at the end, we'll always remember this conversation.
Yeah, and that's a great thing with running as well. Because you go running, and I don't run. I put this out on again social media. Am I a runner or a jogger? And people are like, oh, what's the difference? And I plod around the fields at a pace that I can hold a conversation. But no, you're absolutely right. Podcasts, I think, generate meaningful conversation between people that perhaps wouldn't necessarily, the stars don't always align and come together. I mean, I think the closer we come, I think I passed you on the road once when you were in lockdown. We were pretty much about 2 miles apart.
You guys have been like circling each other for years.
I mean,
like two sort of predator, big sort of predators.
I just notice you all the time. I'm just too nervous to go up. I want to ask the other thing. I just want to ask as well, because I know we're coming. We're taking up lots of your time. With Ranulph Fiennes, Sir Ranulph Fiennes, you guys have done lots of things together. You had a climb where he turned back 300 meters before the summit.
On Everest, yeah.
On Everest.
Yeah.
What was the decision there?
Well, he said that it was, so he made that decision. And he said that it was, he was going to be too tired to safely come back down.
300 meters is not...
it's not that far, but on Everest, it was a bit more than 300 meters. It was probably closer to like 400 or 500 meters. But on Everest, that's going to be like 6-7 hours worth of climbing, because it's 400 vertical meters. And as a mountain guide, that's quite hard to actually say, well, Ran, I think you should continue, or whatever it may be. Deep down, I mean, I've got a slightly different feel about why he may have turned round.
Do you think he needed a poo?
He needed a poo, yeah. Yeah, he was worried about getting like sort of 3 inches of his dick out of like 8 inches of clothing.
Come around, how's this going on?
And of course, he's got no fingers on one hand, so he's got to do the zipper.
He was like, this is going to be awkward.
No, that's going to be
I'm going to have Kenton to get my dick out. This is going to be weird.
Oh my God, I've got a cameraman. This is like gold dust content. It's Kenton on his hands and knees trying to get a zipper out, or whatever.
What do you think it was? What?
Well, I do wonder a little bit, and Ran and I, we are friends. We haven't really talked about this. This is back in 2008, I think it was, a long time ago. And
a lot went down in 2008.
I wonder if, for the first time in arguably his career, and I'm putting words in his mouth.
Sure, this is a personal thing.
I wonder whether there was a realization that there was no rescue. Because everything he's done, generally, all the stuff in the poles and the stuff in the deserts and things like that, there's always been some form of rescue. On Everest, there isn't. Now, Everest is about the only place on the planet there is no third-party rescue. And I wonder, because he went that day, he turned around and went all the way back down to base camp. All the way to base camp. Nobody does that. Now, Ran's been an endurance fiend throughout his entire career. And when he came back to Everest the next year, he crushed it. I could hardly keep up with him. So I wonder, maybe, I just think it was a mindset thing. And we know that Ran, he wrote the book Mind Over Matter.
Yeah.
I know that he's emotionally strong, but he was out of his comfort zone. His comfort, is the Arctic, the Antarctic, and the deserts and things like that. He's not a born climber. He suffers from vertigo. He was out of his comfort zone.
He was scared of heights.
Yeah, he's out of his comfort zone. He done some amazing stuff to try to get over that. We climbed the north face of the Eiger together, which scared him stupid, and he kept it all together on that. But on Everest, that day on Everest, and I wasn't quite with him. I was just behind him. I've been sorting out some little hiccup at the South Col. So I was catching up. So I wasn't in that position to bolster the confidence. And I think he had made that decision without me, without a discussion. And once you make a decision, it's quite hard to go back on it.
You're gone.
Yeah. And I do wonder if I'd been with him, would we have summited in 2008? No, he came back in 2009, and honestly, he smoked it to the top.
But it's amazing, because when you said you get to that point, there were honestly a bit of like butterflies came in my stomach, thinking that it was almost a bit of panic. There is no help. No. So once you're there, you're stuck. That you're by yourself. That gave me a little bit of panic, and you were just explaining it. Yeah, I can't imagine if you're there.
Where else does that happen? And it's dark at the time, and it's -30, and there might be some wind or whatever. Anybody that has never been there is going to be out of their comfort zone.
That's it. Kenton, listen, we don't want to take up any more of your time. you're on social media. We can follow you on social
There's
media.
only one Kenton Cool out there, and that is my real name. Before you ask,
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the name. It's amazing.
Well, that's going to be part 2 and part 3.
I know, and listen, we can hear your talks if we want to. You do lots of different talks and things like that, and we can, people can find you in certain places.
I mean, just Google Kenton Cool.
Yeah.
Is it kentoncool.com?
KentonCool.com?
Kenton Cool sounds like a really wicked porn name.
Well, what's a porn name meant to be? It's meant to be like your mother's mate. Okay,
It's the pets.
Your
First
pet,
pet.
your first pet, and your mother's maiden
Yeah.
name. So I'd be Marcus Rutt. There we go. Beat that
That's
one.
good. Marcus Rutt.
Marcus Rutt, Kenton Cool, and is it mother's maiden name and then the pet, or is it pet then mother's maiden
So
name?
mine's pet and mother's maiden
Mine
name.
would be Chevy Hill.
That's not bad.
Chevy Hill. Mine's worse. Mine would be Bertie Clark.
That's a great
Bertie Clark.
Bertie Clark. Bertie Clark is weak, drawing it all.
That's weak.
I think I win that. Marcus Rutt.
Marcus Rutt. That's a real porn star.
Yeah.
Kenton, before we let you go, one more story you have to give us is this poo story. Then we can let you go. What happened in the poo story?
Okay, the poo story is quite long, but let's do the abridged
No,
version.
you can do as long as you want.
Okay, so I was in hospital, in Bangor Hospital. You know Bangor,
I
you've
know,
been
well.
there, you got paid to go there.
I did.
I didn't get paid to go there. And I essentially got 2 broken legs. Okay, so my legs are on these like metal contraptions, and I'm 22 years old. I'm very self-conscious, and I've been morphined up to the eyebrows, and morphine constipates you. And after like 3 or 4 days, I need to go to the loo.
Yeah.
And I don't quite know what to do. So I press the button, and the nurses are brilliant, by the way. The nurse comes, and I explain the situation, and she goes, well, here's a bedpan. So she gives me a bedpan, and I've never used a bedpan. And the bedpan is made out of cardboard. It's like it's hardened cardboard. I'm like,
Really?
okay, so fine. And she said, do you need help? And I'm super shy. I'm like, no, I got it covered. She's like, fine. So she draws the curtain, and she goes back to work.
Something Bertie Clark would say.
Yeah. And I'm looking at this bedpan thinking, well, how do I get the bedpan underneath me? Because I'm in a position where I'm like lying virtually on my back, and I've got to slip the bedpan underneath my my butt cheeks.
Yeah.
To go to the loo. And there's this arm above the bed, and so I grab the arm, with my 2 arms, and pull myself up, and then let go, and then push the bedpan underneath myself. And I think, okay, I'm now in position, but I need to hold on to the post, otherwise I'm going to crush the cardboard.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to crush the cardboard bedpan.
Yeah.
So I'm there, and I'm like, oh God. All right, okay, well, I'm settled. I can do this. And what happens generally, if you're a guy and you go for a number 2, you generally do a number 1 first, don't you?
True.
So
Impossible not to do one or the other.
So I do a little pee-pee, it turns into quite a big pee-pee, and I fill the bedpan with pee. And I'm hanging there with my legs up high, and I'm hanging there, and I know that the bedpan is full because I can sort of feel it on my butt cheeks.
Oh my God.
And I'm hanging on to the post. And I think, Christ, I need to get the nurse back. But I can't
Where's Bertie Clark?
I can't reach the button because I'm hanging on. And if I'm going to let go, I'm going to crush the bedpan. And then what happens? The pee goes everywhere, and I still haven't pooed. And I'm there, I'm thinking, oh my God. And I don't, because I'm so shy, I don't want to just scream out because I'm on a ward full of other people. This is not what a good Englishman does. You don't just scream for help because you need to help with it. So I'm looking at and I can't reach the button. And I'm there, and I'm hanging there, and I'm a climber, so I can hang for quite a lot. And it felt like hours. It's probably like, I don't know, 10 minutes. And my arms are quivering because I'm hanging on there, and I'm not going to let go. And finally, somebody, like, his face appears through the curtain. And it's a lunch lady, and she's like, "Would you like lunch, dear?" I'm like, "Get the nurse! Get the nurse! Please get a nurse!" And she goes, "Well, we got pasta or we got potato. Screw that! Just get the nurse." And the nurse finally arrives. I'm shaking, I'm covered in sweat, and then she goes, "Oh, what's the matter?" I'm like, "Please, just grab the bedpan. I need help. And she grabs the bedpan. And then she departs, and I still haven't pooed.
Oh my God.
So you didn't get another bedpan back? So what, you just went back down and went, okay,
I just like lie there and go, you know what? I'm just gonna
shit the bed.
You've still never been to the loo since then.
I've never been to the loo since
Bangor. You've never been to the loo.
Oh God, it was horrendous.
Kenton, thank you so much for being such a great guest.
Thanks.
Honestly,
just
a
thank you for having
fabulous guest. Thank you so much. Listen,
and
everybody,
we've got a date running around the fields.
I can't wait. I'm going to take you up on that. I'm going to run around and knock on your door because I know where you live. So I'm
Fantastic.
actually going to do it. I swear to God.
please do.
I
Should we
can't wait.
split a 300 grand? Should we split it?
You can't go
We
and
do it
game with him.
together?
I'm going to do it.
Oh, just
Yeah,
you two.
yeah,
Just us two.
it's bespoke. It's 1-to-1.
Yeah,
Oh, is it one
get
to
out
one?
of here.
Yeah, you're not
Lucy.
invited.
I'm not invited.
Yeah, you're not the funny one.
You're not the
You
funny
claim you are.
Everybody, thanks so much. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.